Hello everyone, welcome back to Nutkin Farm. What you're looking at is an old photo of Nutkin Farm in its infancy, and when anyone moves to the area, like a Sydney-sider like me, anyone interested in heritage, we often wonder, how did this place start, who was behind it, what were they thinking, what were their aims in bringing it to fruition. And it's not everyone who can find that out, but today I have a couple of special guests who were the creators of Nutkin Farm, and they have quite a story to tell. And so, without further ado, here are Dr. Richard Arnot and his wife Margaret, who still live in the area. They're now in Ballina, I think, and they've come back to visit their creation. And while there's probably some surprises, I'm sure there's some familiarities as well. And so I thought we'd have a chat so that all of the people who are fans of Nutkin Farm, and there are many friends and family who just fall in love with the place, I thought it would be great to show them who dreamed it up and who brought it into fruition. So starting at the beginning, this was a cattle farm?
It had been a dairy farm.
It had been.
Yeah, when we bought it, it was planned that that owner was going to plant avocados, I think.
Yeah,
Right.
that was Enfield, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
it was Enfield.
Yeah,
Oh, the Zenfelds owned it?
Yeah.
From Zenfeld's Coffee?
yeah, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
John,
There's some
John
symmetry in that.
Zenfeld. Yeah,
Yeah, no, I've met John.
yeah, the older one.
Yeah, yeah.
He's recently died.
Oh, has he?
The old man died, yeah.
He gave me the whole idea for having a farm.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So, yeah, that goes back a way.
Yeah.
And
So he owned the property but hadn't done anything with it?
No,
Or-
he planned
It was-
avocados, but I think they were in,
I
it
don't
was the
think he
wrong
had
area.
It was, the whole place was just
He hadn't
completely
done it.
overrun with brambles and lantana, and it was just a shambles.
Right.
And
So there hadn't been cattle on it any time recently?
No, not for at least 20, 30 years.
Right. At some point it had grown bananas as well. I don't know when that
we never
was,
found
from what I've heard.
much evidence of that.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. So anyway, it was a mess, and it's hard to visualise something in a mess, isn't it?
But perhaps we
really?
should
Or-
tell you how it all actually started, how we got onto it.
Well, you're a general surgeon, and so what
Well,
made you want to
well,
farm the way a barrister
Well,
might want
basically
to farm?
well, I grew up in Africa, in Rhodesia,
Oh,
and I've always fancied the idea of living in the country and having a farm or something. But basically what happened in about 1987, we got some money from somewhere, and Margaret had some money from an education superannuation or something anyway. So she came over looking for something to buy over here. We were living in Inverell at the time.
okay.
Margaret came over and looking at a few sort of small acre blocks, and the agent who when I came over to sort of have a look as well, the agent who was driving us around was taking us to show us a little block at the end of General Stubbs Drive, little sort of 5 acre rocky block, and anyway, he drove past this place, and then he stopped and he said, "Look," he said, "this isn't what you're looking for," but he said, "I'm going to tempt you." And we climbed through the fence, and there was this totally derelict property. But the one outstanding feature was it had quite a good cow bales on it, with a very good roof. And I thought that'd make a useful little weekender cottage.
It's still there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we.
The roof's still good too. I've had that inspected. Yeah, yeah.
Well, we bought this. That was the selling point as far as I was concerned. But unfortunately, I overrode Margaret, who wanted this little property, and we bought this big property.
Right.
And
Which would have been then 60-something acres,
it would have
or
been
before 70,
60,
maybe 70,
It was about 70
before
acres.
you added the other
Yeah,
block.
yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, so you bought
We
that.
bought that, and then we were determined to use it as a holiday farm.
Yeah.
So we
I should ask. You don't have to tell me, but
Yeah.
do you remember what you bought it for?
Yeah, I do remember. It's 145,000, wasn't it?
Thereabouts. I
Was
think it
that-
might have been 150.
Was that expensive at the time?
Not
Not really, no.
No.
Yeah. I mean, we've got people. I've got friends looking for farms and hoping to spend under $2 million. Of course,
I know, 145,000.
Things have changed.
Things have changed in the Northern
there
Rivers.
wasn't,
Yeah.
But anyway,
nothing on it.
going back to the bales, which was the selling point as far as I was concerned, it was as the cows had just walked out of it 20, 30 years point. The floor was about 2 foot thick in cow manure, and it was completely overgrown. So I came back and drove down one weekend with a friend from Inverell.
Yeah.
We bought some blowers. We must have bought a little electrical generator thing, and we cleared all the dung, all the manure out. And we got a chainsaw and said, "Where are we going to have a window?" "We'll have a window there and there." And we literally
Cut windows.
and where we thought we'd.
I wondered whether they were original.
Yeah, no, it was very much homemade, the whole thing.
Yeah.
And we had no screen. The first.
You had to build a frontage.
Yeah, that's right.
It was
Yeah,
all open.
Yeah.
So what we did
And it
is
definitely didn't have the deck. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
We
even a
didn't-
wall at the front, so we could.
Yeah.
the deck was put
enclose
in some years later, but we took the sort of holding. There were two pillars in the middle of the thing holding the roof up, so we had to put a beam across to support that.
Yes.
And then we built the front to give us a bit of frontage and security so you could lock it up.
So that was your house for the
Yeah, it was
initial.
a holiday house.
come over
We'd
for
stay there for weeks at a time.
School holidays.
Well, what about the house on the corner? What about
Yeah.
the?
We never really stayed there. It was
No,
it was
never.
a bit run down and.
We just tenanted, had
But
it
it was
managed
there.
by a.
Yeah.
It was the original
Yeah.
farmhouse,
Yeah.
and that was the bale. And we just got someone to manage it and
Yeah.
got tenants in there.
When I had the place inspected, I was told that it was circa 1950, that farmhouse, but inside
1850.
it looks
1950, yeah.
Oh.
inside it looks a lot older
I
than
don't- no, it
1950.
was older than that, I'm sure.
Yeah, there's some old woodwork in there that
Mm.
suggests like
Like
1920s
I'd say
or something.
20s. I think.
Yeah. Anyway, the weatherboard needs some work, and it's
Mm.
one of the things.
Are people still living there now?
Yeah, tenants are there now.
Tenants are there.
Yeah, so I've got tenants in the bales and tenants
Oh.
It's in
in
the bales as well.
Yeah,
Oh, good.
yeah. No, there's a photographer living in the bales, and there's a school teacher and a kid's living in the corner house. Yeah,
Mm.
they're the most permanent residents here. Yeah.
When we first moved into the bales, the only water supply was a tank at the back of the thing, which leaked and had a single tap to it. That was
Yeah.
the only source of water we had.
Yeah.
We had no toilet, nothing, and we just had a box of the bucket in it was our toilet,
Yeah.
and the shower was into the so water out of the tank into another bucket, standing out.
Yeah.
It suited
And,
Richard fine, but it didn't suit me with 3 kids.
Yeah.
Anyway,
No,
And then-
probably
That's
not. So this is 1987.
87.
Right.
Some of the
August
Christmas
we
events-
bought it. Oh, it was August when we came over.
Yeah.
I was pregnant, that's why.
Right.
And we had our first holiday in that Christmas,
Okay.
end of 87.
Yeah.
Okay. And so from there, what did you start doing with the land? Did you start clearing it and?
Well, we got in touch with, what was the name of the guy who helped develop it?
Peter Davey.
Peter David, but who was his? There was an agronomist who really talked us into the idea of having the contour, planting along the contours, not up and down.
But did you always set out to plant it with macadamias? Was that the plan?
Yeah, that was the plan.
Right.
It was very big in that.
Yeah.
that
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, you were doing this in the era when everyone was doing
that's
this.
right.
I mean, all of these farms around Rosebank, Dunoon, well, Dunoon was planted a little earlier, but,
Yeah.
but Rosebank and Eureka in particular, it all looks like it was planted
Yeah.
at once.
Yeah. it was
So-
good.
Before then, was it all cattle, or what was it before
Big.
macadamias?
It was a big cattle farm, mainly dairy, I
Yeah,
think.
but it wasn't
Yeah.
immediately before. It had been dairy.
That would have been.
I'm told there was a lot
20.
more dairy before, of course, the money went out of making
That's,
milk.
that's
and
right.
Why
Yeah.
would you use this land
Yeah.
for making
Yeah.
milk at $2 a 2
Yeah,
litres?
and half
You wouldn't be
that.
able to afford
Yeah.
it on this land. But
Mm.
so then you joined the macadamia craze, and you got an agronomist to plan the contour planting.
Yeah.
And that was there's contours all over it, but there's particularly in the
Well,
new.
we were living in Inverell at the time, and Inverell was very much a sort of a contour conscious area. All the farmers always did things on the contour to avoid erosion and so forth. And we just naturally followed that's a way of thinking.
Yes. And the planting was done by you. Did you do the planting yourself?
We got contractors in to do all of that.
Yeah.
All the lines that you can see on that photograph, that was all done by, we had contractors. We didn't actually physically do the planting ourselves.
Yeah, yeah. And you've got in this old logbook here I don't know whether that's your writing there or there's a list of your crops. You had some bumper years. You had some real bumper years just before you sold it.
And coffee was selling at the fancy price of, I think we got up to $2.
Are you talking about coffee? Or?
Sorry, not coffee.
Macadamias.
Nut and shell. It was
Nut
less than $2.
Yeah, $1.50.
Yeah, no, there was that depressed period which people still talk about, where they were getting $1.50 a kilo and people were leaving nuts on the ground. They couldn't really make money from it.
Yeah.
But there's your old logbook, and funnily enough, when I came to buy this place, the agronomist who I got to survey it and say, is this a viable property? And he ended up giving it a small tick of approval. He said, look, there's some struggles, but you can get it going.
Never enough trees.
Yeah, well, it's sort of fixable, but there were some notes about what varieties were planted, and one of those can't be right because it mentions a variety 388, and the agronomist thinks he meant 344. But it looks like you've got 1989/1995. When did you really plant the trees?
89.
It was 89.
Oh, the beginning.
The beginning.
The old blocks.
Yeah,
the old blocks.
It was very early on. Yeah.
Right, 89. Okay.
89, yeah.
So I was assuming it was more mid-90s.
Oh no.
No. That was the second block. That's the block we bought from Peter Fraser. That we cleared that and started planting up that.
But
side.
you planted coffee in that.
No. Macadamias in the lower part and then coffee on the upper part.
Oh, there's no macadamia trees left standing. Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. There's no coffee left standing either.
That's
Oh no, we got rid of the coffee.
The coffee was
just to sell the property. Nobody wanted coffee.
Did well for a few years until there was a sudden frost and we lost half the crop just overnight.
In coffee.
A late frost.
It's heartbreaking. Yeah. So those blocks were planted in 89, and then it looks like 2 years before you sold the property, you planted the younger blocks.
We would have planted that, but that was just a small number.
Oh, that would have been.
From what I could read here, you might have done that in 2006, a couple of years before you.
This all refers to coffee.
That's
all coffee. Yeah.
That's coffee, but then further on, it seemed that this block here and the ones over the other side of the creek were planted roughly 2006, I think, from what I could read in there. So it would have been a couple of years before you sold. Although, if you've got any better memory,
this is all my stuff, all my notes.
Yeah, it changes over to the next owners after that, but. There's some fairly consistent handwriting that I assumed might be you, Rich.
My scrawl.
But
doctor's handwriting.
It's a bit better than average doctor's handwriting. It's just with that list of varieties. I wish I'd had some better detail about what was planted.
That's why I wonder, would Phil know? Oh no, he wouldn't have known the original.
No, but he probably would know.
Do you know Phil Tully?
Phil Tully. He was the manager.
He managed this place for many years.
So he was an on-site visiting manager.
Yeah, he lives at Rosebank and he's still there.
He's still there. No, he's got his name is larger than life in the local area. He's quite famous. Yeah.
So we just relied on him
for
varieties and he would know.
He certainly knew something about it because back in, I think it was 2006 or 2007, you had a real bumper year and you brought in 47 tonnes of nut, which is for the number of trees you
Yeah.
had.
It's pretty good.
Certainly, even by modern standards, that's massive. That's a really super good crop. And then I've since spoken to other people in the industry who were farming nuts around there, and they said, no, that was a golden year where everyone made a fortune in nuts, but you only got $1.50 a kilo
That's
for
right.
them. So if you'd made 47 tons of nuts last year, you'd have been paid $6 a kilo. And, you know, that's another
We'd
profit.
have paid a few bills up there.
But if you really did want to know about the varieties, Phil's the man.
Phil would be the man to talk to.
Oh, well, I might follow him up on that, because I'm still investigating some of those, and then after that, I think when these trees were young in what I call block 1, going around here, and both blocks on the other side of the creek. You definitely must have planted the blocks on the other side of the creek.
Sure, we did.
Yeah, and very much contoured there, very heavy contour.
All the planting we did was on contour.
They weren't doing too well when we left, I think.
Which ones? On the other side? No.
Yeah, they were pretty young.
Yeah. And I don't think the soil's as good on that side as it is on this side for some reason.
It might not be. There's certainly more rocks.
Yeah.
There's certainly more rocks. Well, the ones I've found, I've got to
Yeah.
try and get them removed if I can, but easier said than done.
Yeah.
They've, I think at that point the farm froze in time because the next owner didn't feed them, and he got some occasional crops when he was lucky, but otherwise he was doing this biodynamic farming, which involved not doing anything terribly much in terms of feeding the trees. So just to put that into context, I come in 2019 and start feeding the trees up. And just this year now, those trees are springing up out of the ground. So they've awoken from slumber. Yeah. Even the ones on the other side of the creek, and they're starting to look really good.
Yeah.
So that original vision you had might one day, come up sort of.
We planted these ones during quite a dry period, and we actually hand watered them for at least a year or two.
That's what I've been doing to there's ones that died, and I've been doing gap fillers and hand watering those.
We had bought one of those big 1,000-litre tanks, which we put on a trailer and then just trailered it around. And,
which I should do something like that as well, because I've just been putting 15-litre drums of seaweeds and doing that, doing that. But so is the. I mean, so as far as the macadamias were concerned, did they grow fairly quickly when you planted them? They
did grow fairly quickly, didn't they?
What have we got? Can I just have a look at the book? That we might see some.
There's nothing in there.
Not pictures of trees at all there.
Of the young trees.
We will find some when I have time to look more.
Yeah,
That was just a quick grab thing.
So there was a long period, of course, where you're growing the trees and you're spending the money, and you weren't obviously getting a return.
No.
I suppose it's good for tax.
It was tax.
Yeah, there was a
tax. It was really the tax dodge of the 80s, wasn't it? For a lot of people who weren't committed farmers, like they'd buy a farm anyway and get the tax write-off from it.
Well, it was a good recreational area. That was the other important aspect for my working as a doctor in.
So we really bought it as a lifestyle. It wasn't, because if you wanted to work in farm, it probably wasn't the best idea at the time. And so we thought lifestyle and a farm, and and a lot of people at that time were just buying properties and planting them very, very heavily.
Right.
Yeah, and then in the end, years down the track, they were taking every second tree out, and because you used to get a tax bonus for the number of trees you put in, something like that.
Oh, really? I didn't realise it was that specific. So, There's a lot of overplanted properties in the area, and you can see them up at Dunoon and those sorts of areas. Yeah. So Rosebank less so, but
So we weren't into that sort of thing. It was more, to come and stay here, eventually maybe live here, and have a farm on the side.
If you look at the census data for Rosebank now, nearly everyone's a graduate. Nearly everyone is from somewhere else.
Oh yeah.
And other than my neighbour Peter Fraser next door, there really aren't dyed in the wool second or whatever generation residents here. Unlike other farming areas, the people have come in possibly for the lifestyle. I mean, look, I'm one of them. Although I want to do farming as well. It was obviously Emerson Road was always a dirt road, but were all the other roads dirt then?
No.
No.
It's
they-
pretty
The
much the
tar
same.
roads all up until the bottom of Emerson.
That's right.
Right, so it's
Yeah.
the same as it is now.
Yeah, it's
Pretty well,
exactly
right.
the same.
So what else
Just
has
a f-
really changed for you about the area coming up today?
Well, it's the roads I think
Overgrown.
are worse now
Yeah.
than they were, and
Well, you
there's
know,
a lot more.
Byronshire ends
Yes,
at
yeah.
Cooper's Creek,
Yeah.
and then the roads get better
Exactly.
because Lismore actually
Same,
give it
same
down
the
here.
other end,
Yeah, yeah.
Ballina and Byron, you can see the difference.
Yeah.
Yes, because Ballina look after the roads
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
They're not
Ballina
bad.
are very good at road.
They're not a slack council.
No,
Yeah.
no, Byron's the one.
But the other features is just
They're
so...
the problem, aren't they?
They are.
But the touristy roads,
Yep.
like the Eureka Road on the tourist trail is great, but once you get on
Not
Eureka
on-
Road in the farmers trail,
Yeah.
they couldn't give a damn
No, they
about
don't.
you.
No.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
it's quite a.
Yeah, no.
So that hasn't changed much other than
No, not really. And then you notice, properties that we might have known people had owned at some point and have moved on. A lot of, or things have changed in that way.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
all our
And
neighbours
everything's
have
just so
changed.
much overgrown too.
overgrown in
I
terms
mean,
of.
trees are bigger all over, and
Yeah.
it's just looking a lot more established.
Yeah. I mean, I've got some long-term issues now, and that a lot of macadamia farmers are coming into those issues where they're all planted in a rush in the 80s and the
Yeah.
90s, and then people get as much crop as they can out
Yeah.
of them without spending any money on keeping the trees to a certain
Yeah.
height.
Yes.
And then beyond a certain point, you either prune them very brutally, which they don't like, or you dig them up.
Mm.
So you dig them up and start again, and the dig them up and start again is possibly what I'm going to look at, except the idea is there's 4 rows of trees, you remove the 2 middle ones, and you plant one in between where those 2 middle ones were, so you've got a wider row spacing, more chance for grass to grow in between the rows. And erosion has become an issue on Nutkin Farm over time. And if you have a look at some point, and feel free, we can go have a look, but there is some root exposure there that you wouldn't have seen back in your time. Eventually, erosion does get
What
there.
are your plans to do with these really big trees that we drive past as we drove in? Are you planning to keep those or thin those out? 'Cause they really are
The
quite-
last
they're
owner
really
was
big.
removing random trees to
Yeah.
try and let light back in the orchard,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
removing random trees is a problem because we still farm in rows and we still harvest in
Yeah,
rows,
yeah.
and it's not efficient to just remove random trees all over the
No.
place because you end up with no crop from them.
Yeah.
I've last year experimented with the block furthest over towards Emerson Road and done some height reduction pruning, which just lets some more light back in. But the varieties you've planted, and this is why the varieties were important, you cut back some varieties and they'll sulk for 3 years and give you nothing. And now there are modern varieties of macadamia that crop in 3 years, and so you're almost better off pulling up the big old trees, chipping them, solving your erosion problem, which is definitely there, and replanting. And then within those same 3 years, you've got a new tree of a newer variety that will crop. The other option, and it's been done around, I mean, you lived in Brooklet for a while. I've seen some old farms in Brooklet where if you think of pruning as being in a human body, if you compare a macadamia tree to a human body, like chopping off at the elbows, that's standard pruning. There's some pruning around that Brooklet area which is chopping off at the hips, literally severing the main trunk and getting it to sprout again, which it'll do, but there's some studies that say that you won't get the same level of production back again. The tree just doesn't ever really recover from that. So it's a staged replant, I think. If you've let the farm go too long, there's sort of, and if you do little bits at a time, you can still have a crop.
Yeah.
We went from 0 crop the year before I got it to 22.5 tonnes last season.
That's good.
With me restoring it to normal agriculture.
Have you got somebody managing it, looking after the...
No. But I contract in.
Yeah.
So I thought, being a farmer, I wanted to call the shots. Because if I outsourced it all entirely, I wouldn't feel like I was...
Do you?
I'd feel like a fake. I mean, I still feel half a fake. Because I contract out the harvesting the pre-harvest preparation and the spraying. And the fertiliser spreading gets done by, all Norco handles sort of a lot of that for me. My main job is mowing, to be honest, but also making these strategic decisions and, of course, getting my checkbook out and spending the money. That's the other big part of my job.
So do you still use the bins and the silos that we've got up at the shed? You're not using that at all?
No, and those dehusking rigs and everything, people are giving them away now.
Because you're now selling nut in husk.
You're selling nut in husk, and they're getting it. They'll shell it. They'll husk it for you for free or for next to nothing. And their machines are better. You probably got the electricity bills from dehusking your nuts, and you realise that's expensive. That's an expensive rig. So no, the silos are not in use. The dehusking is in use. It's a nice shed. It holds the tractors. It's still got all your old tractors, the Carraro, the big old Kubota. I think you got. The only thing that isn't there would have been your old Toro mower if you had the old Toro.
No, we didn't use the Toro. We just used the Kubota.
The
one that was used for a harvester as well.
No, it was a little. Was it?
You had a small Kubota.
Yeah.
We used a small Kubota that we left here when we bought the soup or the Shibora.
Might have been converted into a harvester, that machine.
Right.
Because there's an old mowing deck just sitting in there, sitting in the grass, and that was possibly your mowing deck. It was good Kubota mowing deck, made in Japan. It was good Japanese steel. But,
good.
So it's a all that stuff is largely still there, but I won't use those dehusking rigs generally.
Right.
The harvest contractors come in. They bring the bin with them.
Right.
They harvest. They take it away.
I see.
It largely looks after itself.
A lot simpler than our system.
Yeah. Well, there's one. I mean, it's MWT I use, but there's 5 or 6 nut processors I fit contract to, but they actually have those integrated services. So you agree to sell them the nut, but then they also come and harvest it. Take it away, dehusk it, and I never see them again. That's it works for me, and it doesn't. It's not much of a price hit to do it that way, and I think they're now used to a lot of absentee farmers from Sydney or wherever else who don't want to do these things themselves. But the price of farms is, it's gone mad, and the locals who want to get into their own industry are basically shut out by the fact that you just can't get the millions of dollars you need to buy a farm.
That's true. And accommodation nearer the coast is almost impossible now.
Yes.
It's really difficult.
Yeah. Well, the dairy bales, when someone heard it was free, I had a real estate agent begging me to do a rental appraisal. You can if you like, but but
you're very popular.
Filled up straight away. People. There's just that many people getting out of Sydney, and if you've been to Sydney recently, you probably know why. It's a pretty miserable place with the COVID restrictions in force, and it's sort of coming back from that now. But I wanted to show you these photos, and you obviously had these put on boards or something, and I'll show them on the camera. So this first one here, hopefully somewhere where we can see it. This first one here is of the farm in. You can see the contoured rows, and these are drainage channels here.
Yep.
That's the original farmhouse there, and that's the bales. Yep. And of course, the farmhouse that is here is. Was there a shed? Oh, there was a little shed.
There's a little shed there,
that doesn't exist anymore.
That just tumbled down, and we used it for firewood.
Right. This pocket of rainforest.
Yes.
What's the story with that?
Well, it's a remnant of the big scrub.
That was here when we bought the place, and we just kept it there.
You decided to keep it, which I'm doing too.
Yeah,
good.
There's some junk in it though.
There were people that used to come around.
Yes.
What are they called? And maintain it for free.
Yes, but the last
big scrub movement or something.
Yes, the last owner scared them off, unfortunately. Yeah, he told them to get lost because they wanted to use some herbicides to get rid of the lantana. And he said, no, we don't allow those here.
That's why it looks like.
So I want to try and invite them back and say, look, you're welcome again.
I'm sure they'd be
hopefully. Yeah.
Just trying to orientate. Where would the dam have gone in?
Well, the
It
dam.
must be this area here. Here's the little creek. Here's
So
the
there's
dam.
where
That's where the dam was.
That's where the dam would
is
have
now.
been. Yeah.
And the road in goes along that would have gone. The new drive into this house
Would have gone along here, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
The boundary.
And there's that. There's where the dam is, and that's where we put the house.
Right.
This is the house that we're in now.
Because
It'll be up there.
the next door neighbour's the nut house. That house is still there.
Is it?
Yeah. They weren't the one property at any stage, were they?
This would all have been a huge dairy property. Was I think the main house, you say, was there, the main farmhouse, and this was all going right as far as we could see was a huge dairy property.
Right.
It was divided into three, I think,
Okay.
after that, because
Well,
it
give
probably also extended over this. It also extended onto the bit on the south side of General Stubbs Drive, which is over here.
Right.
Someone else who'd know quite a bit of history of our place is the person who built this. Do you know
Greg.
who that is? Greg Price.
Greg Price is
Local
a
real
real
estate
estate
Yes.
agent who sold a place called. He said he knew Nutkin well, and that him and his friends used to shoot rabbits.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
he'd know the history of the farm, I think.
No. So
No?
what's this a photo of?
This is a photo of. This would be when we bought the place, because you can see somebody had previously set up to plant these something. There was maybe the avocados that Zenfeld was planning. He was planning to do it up and down like this, and this is when we went across that and did crossways instead.
So that's the original farmhouse.
the original farmhouse.
That's the shed that's no longer there, and that's the dairy
That's the
bales.
dairy bales, yeah. This would have been taken. You can see all this scrub here, and there's a lot of this lantana and just sort of scrubby stuff all over the area.
Right.
Yeah.
And Richard, you took these from your plane?
Yeah, yeah.
So you had a little light plane that
I
you
did.
flew over, and
I did.
were you taking photos and flying at the same time, or is
Absolutely,
that
yeah.
an offence? Is it?
No. One hand on the camera, one hand on the control stick. Are you allowed to do that?
Oh, you are.
Oh yes. Yes. You don't have to have both hands on.
You don't want to do that in the car anymore.
No, not anymore. No.
Get yourself in big trouble.
There's traffic up there.
Okay, now this
Oh,
photo,
that's a great one. Yeah.
this one is this one's a little way on, obviously, because there's clearly macadamia trees growing.
Yep.
Again, that's the original farmhouse, and there's the scrub remnant.
Scrub. Yep. And here's the neighbour's place. This is the new drive we put in.
Yeah.
This is the platform we prepared to building this house,
Yes.
and the dam.
The dam must have been there,
is down here.
but
yeah.
it's not full. It's just
It
creeks.
hasn't even been built yet.
Right. And you said that the guy who built it really over-engineered the dam and gave you a
Yeah.
bigger one.
He gave us a 60-foot wide spillway, which would have been across here.
Yes.
And that, as I say, that dam filled up within a week.
Because you had a freak
We had 8
rainstorm.
mils of rain, 8 inches of rain, I should say.
And you made it bigger because you hit bedrock, you were saying.
Hit bedrock when he was preparing the spillway. And
Okay.
rather than use dynamite to get rid of the bedrock, we just built the spillway that much wider.
Well, it seems that a stone floor on the dam is a good
It
thing,
seemed
isn't
like
it?
a very good idea. That's
very
exactly
stable.
why we decided to leave it like that.
Yeah. It's a beautiful piece of water
You can
now,
see
as you
here's
know.
the creek coming in here, and there's another one in there. And there's the
Yeah.
little dam that we built before we decided to build the big one down here.
That's now a bit of a silt trap, which
Yeah,
is
yeah.
good.
Yeah.
It protects the main dam from
Yeah.
a fair bit of silt.
Yeah,
But yeah, so those were the trees that you think 1989-ish or so.
absolutely certain of it.
Yeah.
These are the early ones. These, referring back to that original contour of that planting, you
Yeah.
can see these are the trees that we planted.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes, so these
These
contours
were
here
really-
became these trees here.
Maybe 5 years later.
Yeah. Wonderful.
But this is the land this is our previous border, and we bought that bit of land from Peter Fraser.
who had already, that's Peter Fraser's farm, he'd already obviously planted macadamias there.
No, those
No.
Are, I think those are his lemonade plants.
Right.
There's
Citrus.
You didn't have macadamias in those days, I don't think.
Well, he might have had some.
I'm due for a visit to Peter. He's. I'm probably going to be interviewing him as well.
Oh, right.
Teaser for a future episode.
Yes.
But that's interesting. So you might have beaten him to macadamias then, is that?
Well, we're not sure about that.
I don't remember him planting macadamias, but he may have done.
He planted some really old varieties, and I've got to speak to him about those. But and this final photo, again from your plane.
Yep, again and again, one of the early ones, still showing the original idea of Zentfield's idea of planting avocados up and down.
Oh, so he had in fact planted avocados,
or he hadn't done.
He prepared
it and then didn't follow through. He then, about the time that we bought this place, he bought the farm where he lives now, had his coffee over at Newrybar.
Yes.
And
on Broken Head Road.
On Broken Head Road, yes.
Yeah. And so the original, that's the nut house next door, and it looks like someone built a driveway there, or was that?
That was
the boundary.
It's just a boundary, but it's actually the access road to their house.
Yeah, well, it's now my driveway. They've got an access road coming in there now.
Yes.
So yeah, interesting. So there wasn't heaps of natural vegetation. There was some open grassland, particularly on the other side of the creek.
Yeah, it doesn't show much, but it was pretty scrubby country. There was
with the lantana and everything.
Yeah.
There were lots of clearing involved.
Yeah.
Quite a lot of work. You did. Yeah.
And then Yes, that had been cleared, wasn't it? This was this was the second lot of planting over here, which is on that hill there. Yeah.
Which hadn't done all that well, but now look, my agronomist recently said to me he's so happy about how it's turning out.
Yeah.
But
and have you been down to the creek? There's a way.
Yes. I whenever I mow now, I mow the track that leads down to Cooper's Creek.
Oh, good.
And I've mowed a picnic area at the end, like a circle picnic area, trying not to get too close to the water because if I went for a slide into that, there'd be no way out. But it's still drivable with a 4-wheel drive, and it's still quite pretty.
It's beautiful.
Like it's and very rainforesty. But like the rest of the place, there's lantana in it. The guy who I had owl boxes, we put in owl boxes to control rats naturally, and he said, look, there's some coffee in there. Some wild coffee trees in there, which isn't good news. And there's privet and there's lantana and there's all those sorts of things still there. But he was very excited about the paddock that you bought off Peter Fraser. Has 2 big trees in the middle of it that weren't cut down. One of them's a teak, and the other one is an Antarctic beech. And that's a very special tree. That's a Gondwanaland tree from where Australia was merged with, was it South America or a couple of other continents. Yeah. They can no longer breed normally because it's too warm a climate now. But that Antarctic beech is like 50 metres tall and an absolutely precious preserved tree. It's potentially 1,000 plus years old.
Might have to go and have a look at that sometime.
Yeah, well, at the moment I've got the neighbours' horses eating the paddock as much as possible to save me from slashing it. And of course they manure it up as well, and that's the best way to deal with it before I plant anything. But I just thought, look, buying the place, I'll give it a year. I won't pretend that I know everything. I'll give it a 4 seasons, see what the plants around the house are doing, the farm and everything else, and then see what I'm capable of, which isn't much. Yeah.
Well, what is the time?
Yeah, Richard needs to watch the time. 11:05.
Yeah, that's all right. Time.
But that's that's good. But I guess so. Now I should ask you. I mean, are you surprised by what you see today?
Just the growth. We cannot get over the growth. Particularly these back areas, not so much the trees are enormous, the macadamia trees, but coming in, but all those big trees back here
around the house
we planted up that drive up top.
Yes.
You can't believe
we
that.
We planted some of that, but the other ones that are self-seeded are those
pines on
the radiata pines.
Yeah.
They've just grown.
A lot of them were cut down. I think by the neighbours years and years ago. They didn't like the radiata pines much, and
they just came up by themselves.
Yeah. So that's
it's growth. It's just incredible after that many years.
Was it what you were dreaming about? Was it sort of what you were visualising in terms of?
Well, we did come out, just not so long ago, so I suppose it's a bit not so much of a change, but I remember being amazed at the orchard as you drive in and how beautiful that looked, down the left. And you look through and the staghorns growing on the trees, and it was just so pretty.
Really established.
Staghorns are good apparently. They don't cause any harm. I think one of my mates, Garth, say they're for character. Although they can harbour rats if they get big enough, but I don't mind any of that. I do love it. It's the combination of the order of the trees, I think, and the serenity that comes with them. You can just walk along a row of trees and lose yourself. It's a lovely thing that you created, both of you. It's really. I think you should be proud of it.
We are proud of this. We developed three places over the years.
Right.
First was where we lived in Inverell, where we bought a bare paddock with a road quarry in it. And we went back there a few years ago, and the people who are living there now are got a great market garden, and then we moved to here, and then we subsequently built a place at Brooklet.
Right.
And we've recently moved out of there, but all three have been some very special places.
I think I've been down your road at Brooklet, Jorgensen's Lane.
Yes.
I think it was.
It's on the corner.
Our place is the one right on the corner.
There's some gorgeous farms near there. Brooklet's
beautiful.
Really quite special, and of course now very sought after because you can go to the Harvest Cafe at Newry.
Hemsworth's bought it around the corner, so we.
The Hemsworths have bought near there too.
Not Luke, Liam.
Liam. Oh, is this where he's building his yoga retreat?
No, that's another place, I think.
Oh.
No, they bought Newry Bar Downs, which was a wedding venue accommodation on Brooklet Road.
Yes.
Yeah, a beautiful property, and it's got a helipad, which I'm sure helped.
I'm sure he'll use it.
Yeah. So apparently they just walked in, offered this enormous amount of money, and 2 weeks later they were living there.
Yeah. Well, Chris Hemsworth, if you're watching, for $10 million you might persuade me.
This is
anything less, forget it.
It'd be great.
So no, that is interesting. I think you definitely have something to be proud of in your creation, and I've got to do as much justice to it as I can, and
we did love it here, and very sad to leave. I grieved for a long time.
Yeah. But at least you didn't move that far away.
No, it wasn't. Yeah, it was just this.
We moved right around in a complete circle because the place where we bought at Brooklet was actually the property that Margaret looked at when we were looking to buy this place.
Well, it was on the market.
It was on the market then.
And I think I told Richard about it, and he just didn't bother looking at it.
I wanted something bigger.
Right.
Yeah, we were looking for like 5 acres, and he ended up with
Well, you were looking for 5 acres. I was looking for something bigger than that.
And you ended up with 93.
Yeah.
With the extra paddock.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what. So I just said yes in the end.
Well, historically speaking, thank you for what you did. I think it's a very special place, and everyone who comes here does seem to fall in love with it and wants to come back. No one's been here just once out of my family and friends. They all want to come back multiple times,
great.
and I do want to develop it as a sort of a family asset. And
we're very pleased.
We've had huge family sessions. Well, first at the Bales where we lived, where we used as a holiday place, and then here once we built this.
We've had
some many big family functions.
Yeah. And you also get the feeling, you see lots of farming shows on ABC where every farmer will tell you, I want to leave the place better than when I found it. Yeah. And I now understand that. Yeah. You really do want to,
improve it.
You don't want to, you want to respect what you've got, but if you can yeah, I'm hoping we can address the longer term issues.
We're very pleased that you've got such an interest in it, you know, and really want to do that. We were a bit sad.
It's no tax dodge for me. It's a real
What we might do sometime is when you've developed it a bit more, is hire a little plane from Lismore and fly over here and take a couple of aerial photographs.
Absolutely, I'll do that. I thought of getting a drone, although the drones with decent cameras in them are a bit expensive.
Yeah.
You can't get up that high, I suppose. But yeah, and you can get some aerial shots from Google Maps, but they're not necessarily what you want.
They don't give the detail that something like this can get.
And I know my agronomist would be interested in the top-down view as well, because he looks at some ideas, and some of the trees have grown obviously too close to the residences, and you know, you don't ever want to spray near those residences because there's toxic issues and that sort of stuff. So helping to plan the future and perhaps a little bit of tree removal near the houses is
so who's your agronomist?
My agronomist's Mark Duncan. He's based in I think he's got an office in Wollongbar.
Mark Duncan is who Dylan was talking about.
Was it?
Yeah. Ask him, does he play cricket?
I think he does. He's a pretty sporting...
Blondish?
Yes.
Yes, he did work for us in Kurrabil. And I told our son about your videos, and he had a quick look, and he says, I saw... And he couldn't remember his name.
Yeah.
And I said, that's...
Episode one of the Macadamia show, where my friend Garth, who owns a farm in Triggergill, we were just walking through the orchard, and he showed up on one of his visits. So it was just one of those things that happened, and I dragged him into the video as well. He probably hasn't watched it himself, poor Mark, but he was very
Have you mentioned our
very
name?
forthright.
Probably not.
No, I didn't.
Because
but I will.
Yeah.
Well, he'd know our son who played cricket with him.
Yeah, and he worked for us at
well, he's now a very respected agronomist.
Yes, well, that's all happened.
Yeah. I can't.
But Graham Fleming, who was the one who assessed this farm before I bought it, and he's the senior director on the Australian Macadamia Society, and an agronomist way back from, like, he was helping people in the 70s and 80s. So he really knows his stuff, and you know, other than he said, look, you want a helicopter if you live here, and dismissing the farm as miles from nowhere. It's not miles from nowhere. No. And as you said yourself, you don't notice it when you live here, but you would have noticed it this morning. And that's fair enough.
It took us 45 minutes from
45 minutes from Ballina.
And it's only when you get... You're not used to the roads, it seems further.
I can
when
make
you
it up.
drive here from Ballina, do you come through Nashua? Do you take the overland route, or do you stick to the main?
I like the scenic route through Nashua. Down, you left down Tinton Road and then right up Fernley Road.
Nashua.
That's where we came today.
It's only about 3 minutes more than going via the M1. The difference on my smartphone anyway, it tells me here's your options, and I usually go there, and I usually find an excuse to stop off at the Clunes General Store and get a treat. It's still
we came
thriving.
Across through Eureka.
You come through. You come to
through Eureka's good.
Then Eureka.
The other day.
Without going all the way down to Clunes.
Okay. If you cut off earlier, then it probably came up Bouillon Road.
Springvale Road. To Eureka.
Yes.
It's more direct.
Springvale Road's a bit of a goat track now.
Well, it is now.
We're just driving around Gorman's Road. It's a dress circle in Eureka. It's gorgeous stuff. But
should go by there.
I know well worth a visit. Gorman's Road. It's
someone really. The Norco fellow.
Norco fellow. Yes.
The biggest farm on Gorman's Road is now up for sale for 4.8 million.
Okay.
Is that right?
Yeah, 10,000 trees odd, but that's what they're going for now. It's just crazy. Well, thank you both for coming. I will sign off on our video, and I hope for friends and family who've watched through all of it that you've got yourself some insight into the history of Nutkin Farm. For everyone else, I will do a video that's more relevant to the industry rather than this farm itself in a little while. Thank you for watching. Bye.